The movie begins with a couple named Richard and Mary talking about their decision to send their son Stephen to boarding school because he's been behaving badly. Stephen doesn't like this idea on the way to school. Stephen tries to convince his father to let him stay home, but their argument gets heated, and they both start yelling at each other. This causes Richard to lose control of the car, and they crash into a truck. 6 months later, Mary goes into a room where Stephen is lying on the bed. Sadly, he's paralyzed from the accident, and Mary has to take care of him. She leaves him in front of the TV before heading to her job at a clinic. Mary is a psychologist who works with kids and teenagers. Mary has a patient named Tom, who is a deaf orphan. After their session, Tom's guardian Joan tells Mary that Tom is being transferred to a group home in Boston. Tom has trouble getting along with the other kids there, and often becomes aggressive. Even though Mary is upset by this news, she still wants to help Tom before Tom and Joan leave. Mary brings a scarf and a hat that once belonged to Stephen and gives them to Tom as a parting gesture at the clinic. Mary's receptionist Lucy gives her a brochure about a nursing home for Stephen that evening. Mary had a therapy session with her therapist Dr. Wilson. They discuss Stephen's condition, and during the conversation, Mary decides to send Stephen to the nurse Enning home. Later, Mary bathes Stephen, but she starts drowning him in the water. However, the dream abruptly ends as Mary wakes up. Just as Mary was about to investigate the noise downstairs, she heard her car window shatter. Rushing outside, she found Tom sleeping in her car. After bringing him inside and giving him some cocoa, she received a call from Joan, so she went to her office for privacy. However, during their conversation, Mary got locked inside her office. Fortunately, she had spare keys and managed to open the door, but Tom had disappeared. Seeing the open door, Mary searched outside for the boy but returned home without finding him. The next morning, the sheriff assured Mary that a search for Tom would begin. Soon that evening, Mary heard something outside, but upon investigating, she found nothing and decided to go back inside. Suddenly, she heard eerie sounds and hurried back to the house. Unfortunately, she failed to lock the door properly, and someone stuck their hand in before it closed. When Mary opened the door and saw Stephen, she finally woke up and realized it was all just a nightmare. The next morning, Lucy reminds Mary of her session with another patient, Aaron, so Mary heads to her clinic. During the session, Aaron shares his frustration about the attention Tom is getting. Mary, distracted, stares at Tom's newspaper article after the session. Aaron's father Doug discusses Aaron's progress with Mary. She believes he will eventually accept his parents' divorce. Doug asks Mary out on a date, but Mary declines as she goes back inside. Doug notices Stephen staring at him from the window the following night. While Mary is tucking Stephen in, a noise comes from the hallway. However, Stephen holds Mary's hand tightly, so she chooses to ignore it. In the middle of the night, Mary wakes up because she hears footsteps approaching her room. She freezes in fear as her door slowly opens, and when she sees a young boy in the dark, she closes her eyes out of fear. When she opens them again, and the figure is gone, she breathes a sigh of relief. But seconds later, Tom appears in the room covering Mary's mouth and urging her to stay quiet. In the morning, Mary shares her recent hallucinations with Wilson. He attributes her strange experiences to a condition called parasomnia, which causes night terrors. Mary starts to believe that Tom is dead, and it's his ghost that she is seeing. Wilson asks for a blood sample to prescribe sleeping pills for Mary. The next day, Lucy came to take a bit of Mary's blood for a test. After that, they decided to go for a walk together. Lucy told Mary that she should consider going on a date with Doug to bring some love into her life. Mary agreed and called Doug to invite him over for dinner. During their meal, they talked about dealing with kids who have problems. After dinner, Mary felt very tired and dozed off on the couch. Suddenly, she woke up because he had door closing. Even though she felt dizzy, she got up to check on Stephen. To her surprise, he wasn't in bed, and Mary started to worry. She looked for Stephen, despite feeling confused, and heard strange noises inside the house. Mary followed the noises and realized they were coming from a small door leading to a crawl space. She reluctantly opened the door, and something scared her by grabbing her. Luckily, she managed to break free and shut the door, blocking it. The next day, Mary woke up in front of the crawl space door. When she checked on Stephen, she saw scratches on his cheek, which alarmed her. She called Wilson to tell him that her hallucinations were real. However, he didn't believe her and thought she was holding on to strange ideas, and they should wait for her blood results. Then Mary saw a news report about a boy who looked like Tom being spotted in Florida. This news relieved her a bit. However, there was a snowstorm approaching, and Lucy came to Mary's place to drop off some supplies for it. Lucy even offered Mary to stay at her house, but Mary declined. Mary went downstairs to get some lanterns, but there she heard strange noises as she went back upstairs. Doug surprised her and invited her and Stephen to stay the night with him and Aaron until the snowstorm passed. Mary politely turned down the offer during their conversation. Doug informed Mary that the sighting of Tom was a false alarm. This news made Mary anxious, so she asked Doug to leave before she went back to the basement to do some work. However, she couldn't find the key to the storage, so she used a hatchet to break the lock. Meanwhile, upstairs, Wilson tried calling her, and eventually Mary answered the phone. Wilson began yelling at Mary, accusing her of taking drugs without his approval. Mary denied taking any drugs and was shocked and angered by his accusations, so she left the room in frustration. Unfortunately, she forgot to end the call, leaving it connected. Wilson noticed that Stephen's wheelchair was empty. Just then he crossed the room, then the power went out, and Wilson got disconnected from the call. Desperately, he tried to call Mary back, but she was stuck in the basement with only a lamp to guide her. Soon Mary spotted Tom in the storage room, which frightened her. As she tried to flee, she nearly ran into Stephen. Mary couldn't believe that Stephen was standing up, but before she could react, Stephen quickly knocked her out. Stephen then starts bathing her naked. Mary, when woken from unconsciousness, freaked out Stephen. He then explained that he's expressing gratitude to Mary for taking care of him, as she has been with him constantly since the accident. Stephen didn't want that to change, so he pretended to be unable to speak and move. Unfortunately, when Tom arrived, she started giving him more attention. Stephen feels that Mary chose Tom over him, so he decides to get rid of Tom. However, Tom survived and found a way to hide in the crawl space. Mary realizes that she hasn't been experiencing hallucinations at the same time. Stephen confesses to constantly drugging Mary since Tom's arrival. He proceeds to drug Mary once again. Mary starts crying while her mouth is tapped. Meanwhile, Wilson became concerned for Mary and decided to drive to her home amid the snowstorm. He also called the police to check on her. However, his car slipped on the snowy road and crashed. Luckily, he only suffered minor injuries and continued on foot to reach Mary's house. Mary managed to free herself and drank shampoo to induce vomiting. Getting rid of whatever Stephen had given her, she attempted to call for help, but the landline was not working. Stephen saw her and tried to convince Mary about his plans to send him to a nursing home, but Mary saw the axe in his hand in a desperate move. Mary reached for a gun, but realized it wasn't loaded. Instead, she used the gun to knock on Stephen. Mary then quickly untied Tom, but Stephen regained consciousness and grabbed her by the hair. Mary managed to stop Stephen, allowing Tom to escape. She tried to calm Stephen down, attributing his behavior to the accident. Stephen then admitted to playing a role in his father's death. He wanted his father gone so he and Mary could be together. He then hugs Mary and says they both can be together as they don't need anyone else, but Mary needs him in the groin before making her escape and locking the basement door. Mary searched the entire house for Tom. She eventually found him hiding in a closet, but he was too afraid to come with her. Mary went outside and created fake footprints in the snow to make it seem like she had left. She stashed her boots and hid in the closet. Stephen, seeing the footprints, followed them, but was led to Mary's boots at the entrance. He realized that Mary was trying to deceive him. Stephen opened the closet with a hammer in hand, but failed to notice his stepmother hiding behind the clothes. Just then, when Wilson arrives at the house, Stephen realizes someone is there. Wilson, with the help of his phone's flashlight, starts searching for Mary and comes across Stephen's empty wheelchair. Just as he turned around, Stephen was standing so close to him, staring at him. Stephen stabbed Wilson with the knife and accused him of suggesting Mary leave him at the nursing home. Mary and Tom hear Stephen barricading the house and see him heading upstairs to continue blocking the windows. Mary advises Tom to stay put while she goes out to find a way out. However, as she removes the snow blocking the kitchen door, she is startled by the lifeless body of Doug. Frozen and dead, Mary returns to the closet and takes Tom with her to look for a way out. While avoiding Stephanie, they discover that every door and window is blocked. Mary eventually finds the dying Dr. Wilson, who tells her to play along with Stephen's delusions and get Tom to safety. Mary climbs onto the kitchen table and breaks a skylight window. Stephen hears this sound and rushes downstairs to stop Mary and Tom from escaping, but Tom has already made it onto the roof. Mary tries to trick Stefan and admits her mistakes for lying to him. However, he becomes angry and pins her against the sofa. Mary continues to talk to Stephen, expressing her love for him. Eventually, he lets his guard down. She forces his hand onto the burning stovetop. Stephen starts strangling Mary in anger but is distracted by Tom dropping snow from the skylight. Mary, seeing an opportunity, hits Stephen on the head with a pan, knocking him unconscious. She then removes the nails from the front door with a hammer and escapes with Tom. However, Stephen starts regaining his consciousness. Mary and Tom start running, but Stephen starts following them with a hammer. Mary decided to buy them some time by stopping Stephen. Tom tried to escape on a floating dock, but it was anchored to the main dock. He attempted to break the chains while Mary held off Stephen, but unfortunately it didn't work. Stephen overpowered Mary and sprinted towards the dock. He shoved Tom into the water and began drowning him. Mary came running from behind and attempted to stop him, but Steve was more powerful, so she hit him with the hammer, leaving him dead after some time. Mary goes to a child adoption center with Tom. The boy shows Mary a drawing of a dog and asks if they can have one. Mary tells him she'll think about it. The movie ends here.